Diablo was defeated. For a time it seemed we would know peace. But it was not to be. For Diablo's essence lingers in the Black Soul Stone. I cannot destroy the stone, nor allow its evil to remain within the heavens. And so it must be hidden, even from the angels. I pray that it will be enough. You have done well, Horadrim. Your service here is finished. And you should all run. Malthael. Brother, why? The Nephilim will stop you.
No one can stop death.
Welcome to the Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls cinematic introduction, bringing death to life panel. Your panelists are Stephen Chen, Dan Cox, Eric Grimmenstein, Mike Kelleher, James McCoy, and Mark Messenger.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming to the Blizzcon 2013 Cinematics panel. I appreciate spending your precious BlizzCon time and coming and spending it with us. We're going to delve into that cinematic that you just saw, the Reaper of Souls cinematic. But before we do that, just a couple introductions. My name is Mike Kelleher. I was the CG supervisor on the Reaper of Souls cinematic. But next to me is the director, El Jefe here, of the entire process, Mark Messenger. Next to him is James McCoy, our animation supervisor, and also the director of the hand-drawn 2.5D sequence that you saw at the very beginning. Sheen Wang, our character modeling supervisor. Eric Grimmenstein, one of our senior effects artists on our effects team. Stephen Chen, our look development and surfacing supervisor. And down there at the end is Dan Cox, our lighting supervisor. So let's begin. So the fate of the Black Soul Stone was one of the very big unanswered questions of the Diablo game. And we knew that we wanted to return right away to that storyline. And we felt the best way to do that was to go back to the hand-drawn 2.5D sequence that we had at the very beginning of the original Diablo cinematics, right?
Yes. It just felt, it just felt right. It felt stylistically unified to be all flowery, And James and I worked very closely with Brian Kindergan and the game team to create, what do you want to call it? Like
a buffer?
A story buffer. Yeah, that's a great one. To take us from what had been the very clear victory at the end of Diablo 3, and then, we're going to now the new jeopardy of the expansion. And we needed to fill in, the blanks for Tyrael a little bit, right? Because Tyrael's really between a rock and a hard place, poor guy. I mean, he knows that the Black Soul Stone cannot stay in heaven, that arguably the most dangerous evil artifact in creation should not be in the hands of the incredibly powerful angels.
Probably not.
Who would, certainly be corrupted by it, and that would be bad. But he can't destroy the stone, so he does the only other thing he can think to do, which is hide the damn thing. And unfortunately, we know that doesn't work out so well.
No, it does not. And so we're off to a very appropriately grim start. And actually, grim is the right word, because we were there was an effort by the game team and the cinematics group to go a little bit darker with the cinematic, a little spookier, more gothic, truer to the Diablo 3 or Diablo franchise.
Totally. I'll show you Victor Lee, the game team's lead concept artist. He did this great painting of the Tomb of Rakkus, which just is a great inspirational piece that really helped us find our way early on, gave us an inkling of the dark vibe that we were going for, And, it was just one of those pieces that really spoke to me and Chris Tunig, my art director. And we started to look at it from an almost film noir perspective. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Dan, do you want to speak to film noir a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Film noir, those of you film buffs out there, film noir was the 1940s era. It was defined by lots of graphic lighting, lots of shadow.
Yeah, see?
Yeah, exactly. Very, very moody. It was the days of Humphrey Bogart, right? So you kind of challenged us to go out and figure out aesthetically and technically how to bring film noir into the world of Diablo without turning to your own Humphrey Bogart.
Right.
Very nice. So a new look, a new vibe, and we had one more new thing to do, really, Mark. We had to introduce a new villain.
Yes, the new villain, Malthael, the Angel of Death, who used to have Tyrael's current job. You guys will remember that at the end of D3, Tyrael ascended the magical steps and took his place on the Angiris Council as Wisdom, which used to be Malthael's gig. But Malthael's been AWOL for a while, and something happened to him out there in the ether. He's come back with a decidedly different opinion of humanity. He's now this very evil, kind of dark, icy, remorseless, wraith-like character. And it took all our departments in cinematics to help bring those attributes to life.
So a very challenging character. Sheen, do you want to tell us about how you approached that? How did that go?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the modeling process. Here's the final concept we received from the concept artist, Josh Tallman, and also Matthias and Daniel helped design the wing effects and details. So right after that, we start creating the very simple geometry for 3D pre-visualization purpose. As you can see here, is very simple geometry. The goal is to lock design, lock the volume, lock the proportion. So in order to make sure the translation from 2D to 3D it was successful. So basically we can have a very solid start. So here you see the very low poly. From low to high, our lead modeler, Chang Kang, and another character modeler, Till Oswalden, they put lots of heart and soul into it. Here's a little test, one of the many tests they have been doing for the make sure the Matthew looks not only good on still, in still, but also in motion. These little tests make sure, like fingernails, all these little details. So here's the final model. Chang and Till did a great job in terms of putting the details, make sure the character as live as possible.
Very nice. So that's pretty creepy. James, obviously this character doesn't have some of the things that you could rely on to get a performance. How did you overcome that?
Well, for animation, for Malthael, we really just wanted to make the archetypal Reaper, but do it in our own way. For him, Malthael was a challenge because we wanted to make him interesting, even though he had, a lot of limitations like no face. But the thing is, people are naturally afraid of someone with no face and no emotions. So you just like if someone's staring at you, not saying anything.
That's really creepy. Stop doing that.
Very spooky.
It just makes you feel very uneasy. So we really wanted to play that up, make Malthael feel very unpredictable. So 1 minute he's very calm, and the next moment he's explosive. So the costumes also helped us get into character, but they also helped give the actors the same limitations as our CG characters. We learned that the hood of Malthael was very important as far as establishing the head direction and communicating through body language. Malthael also has a very interesting way of getting around. He floats above the ground. And to get this look, we really couldn't do it by ourselves. We needed the help of our cloth and simulation team, really. So here's a great example of how animation team and the cloth simulation team work together, integrate our workflow, and make the final character look of Malthael, all together. Here's the final cloth sim.
And a really good simulation on Tyrael, too.
Yeah. And the cloth and simulation team, they did something else really great for the animation department on this show. They made us a new tool. In the beginning, beforehand, our characters would look like this, like the white characters with just the bones. Now they look like this, where we have the bones plus real-time feedback with the cloth on the characters in our scenes. Very helpful. It sped things up. We still have to give our assets over to simulation. They have to redo the cloth and make the final one, but it made the process much, much better. This is an example of one of many tools that our rigging team made, our tools programmers made, to help us get this show done. Hats off to them. Thank you all to the tech guys and the tech girls.
Very nice. So that's Malthael, but you were also very interested in doing more with Tyrael, that's right?
Yeah, and it's fun. These two characters are such great contrast to each other. So, it's really exciting to work with them both. We found when doing the character stuff that oftentimes the little things, the subtleties, are as compelling as the big action pieces. So we try to seed this stuff in wherever we can. I got a couple examples. Yeah, if you can click for me there, thank you. When the stone is first lowered into place, into that contraption, when it's first locked into place and secure.
Yeah, right.
We check this out. The little look of the sigh of relief on Tyrael's face. It's just a very little thing, but it's something to indicate the intense pressure that this guy has been under, and this weight that's lifted off his shoulders, albeit momentarily. Another little moment is like when Malthael first slides out of the darkness, right? And he's very still, and we're wondering what's he going to do, building suspense. And all he does at first is just cock his head very slightly to the side. And again, it's just a little bit of business to suggest maybe an aloofness, or just maybe even the icy sort of idle curiosity of a serial killer. Now, if we were shooting live action, the actors would bring this stuff to the table, but we're in CG land, so it falls to us. We got to really dig it out. We got to cultivate this stuff ourselves. And that most of that workload really does fall on James and his animation team, right?
That's right. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, sure.
So I'll talk about that a little bit. Our process begins with this. We shoot live action. We get everyone together in a room with props and costumes, and we rehearse all these roles until Mark feels like we're getting somewhere. Mark's right there watching the whole thing and acting himself.
This is my favorite part of the whole process.
Mark likes to make all the costumes too. You should have seen the panda costume. So we really think with an artistic mindset first. The technical stuff comes later. We really just ask ourselves, how can we make these scenes more convincing? And the trick behind it really is to do this and rehearse enough times that you feel like you're not trying anymore, and that you feel like you can kind of let go of how silly you might feel, so you can really get into the character. Then what we do is we review all the takes with Mark. We together pick out some of the best takes. We think about how we're going to construct these performances with our CG characters, pose by pose and animation. So we look at the really important gestures that are happening in the acting, and we exaggerate those. We push those up. Anything else that's not important to the story, we just don't animate it. We simply just remove it from our plans. Okay, so the next video you're about to see is all about Tyrael and his guardsmen, the Haradrim. Now, for these guys, I was very particular about their motion, so I put together what I call like a style guide. And over the years, we've gotten much better at acting. We've just been doing it a lot in the room here with Mark.
Oh, yeah.
So if there are any Hollywood casting directors out there, feel free to come talk to us afterwards. That's how it's done. Okay, so early on before this show, one of our animators was doing a study on facial animation. His name's Aaron Chan, and he wanted to try to make our characters more believable. So what he did is he went and he shot video reference of this person here, who is Angela. She's our wonderful producer. She helped produce this panel. Thank you, Angela.
Yo, Angela.
For being patient with us. So what Aaron did is he went and he drew dots on her face with a permanent marker, and then he put corresponding dots on the CG character, and then he animated as close as possible to the video. Everything that you see here is all keyframe animation. There's no motion capture. He really just wanted to animate and learn and raise his level of observation and try to pick out all these micro movements and micro expressions. So here's the final result of the study.
But yeah, it pisses me off and it's going to make me angry and I'm not going to deal with it. But yeah, it pisses me off and it's going to make me angry and I'm not going to deal with it. But yeah, it pisses me off and it's going to make me angry and I'm not going to deal with it.
She's like that all the time too, yeah. So we really learned a lot from this study, and we wanted to put it in production. This was just a test. But in order to do that, we had to better isolate the filming reference of the face. This was just a tripod. So we had to investigate a helmet camera.
You look so happy.
This is when I just tried on the first helmet camera. This allowed us to see things we've never seen before on the face. It's just something you absolutely cannot see on the tripod. You can see how twitchy the muscles are and how elastic the face feels. Like, you just don't normally see this way. We went as far as filming the voice of Tyrael, the amazing Jonathan Adams. So we did this. We also really looked at how our wrinkles were working on our characters too. They're very important to the show because Malthael is like the blank canvas, and in strong contrast to that, Tyrael needed to be full of emotion, the polar opposites. So in order to get that emotion, we really needed to double down on the wrinkles of the characters in order to see the exertions and see those fine details. So at this point, we got together with the modeling team, with Sheen's guys, and some animators. We went to Activision's Central Studio, and we hired some actors, and we further developed our process of what we call animated displacement. So Sheen, maybe you can take over and talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, James. Displacement is a very common technique used widely in visual effects industry. But for this project, we want to take the displacement even further. First of all, I want to explain very briefly what's displacement. Here you can see here is the plane neutral material's face, his geometry. So this is with displacement. As you can see here, displacement adds lots of surface detail and also define the volumes much better. But for this project, we want to even do more. We want to do the animate displacement. What it does mean, there's two steps. We did the first step is that we build a facial rig. We have the animate displacement built in to support the animation. So when the animator trigger down the eyebrow, then this is without animated displacement. You can see the wrinkle is messy here, the volume is plain. But this is with displacement help. This displacement triggered in automatically whenever animators fire off the eyebrow down animation. So this obviously helps a lot the facial performance to get the directors what he wanted to get the Tyrael perform he wanted. So here the shot base, the second part of the animate displacement, which is after the animation is pretty much done, in the shot we find whatever the shot we're not very happy or we want to improve upon. So this is one shot without animate displacement. So this is with. This is another shot without and with, without, and after displacement. So displacement is a subtle details, but actually in basically all these last 10% of a subtle detail support the facial animation.
And then this is when we put it all together. We have all the reference from the helmet camera, layering on the wrinkle maps, and then putting it all the way through lighting, all together.
Run.
Brother. Why? Brother. Why?
Awesome. Thank you. We didn't stop at the animate displacement. For the past years, me and James, we always want to improve the facial performance. So I think one way is to study from the real life. So here's one of the preview that are rendered in Activision's in-house real-time skin shader system. What the test is, we wanted to study it from real life. We try to capture the real person's facial expression, but actually map and transferred by using the tools onto our virtual character, Tyrael, on this case. So here we find the model, John, and we did a 3D scan, traditional way. We got the data from the face and body. So, and also that's the important part, we use Activision's in-house multi-cam system to capture the facial expression of the John, which followed by the facial acting coding system. So here's the raw data we got. The modelers, was amazed by the details and the, subtle, skin deformation details from the scan system. But this is raw data. How can we transfer from John onto Tyrael? So we provide a production mesh to one of the technical art director, Bernardo Antonio. So he used his tool to transfer the geometry onto John's volume. It's already with Tyrael's geometry edge loop, but it's John's volume. This is after cleaning up. So here we made established the connection between John and Tyrael. And then we picked one of the facial expression as most expressive, most compressed, condensed facial expression. And we set up the neutral on himself, and then we successfully using the tool to transfer from one to the other. So here's a little video that test video done by himself. Actually, that's Bernardo's face. Just for testing purpose, how the system works with one facial structure to the other very different kind of facial structure. The transfer was very successful. You can see you got a lot of stuff out of the transfer. So we decided to extend to one more step is my attractive face.
That is attractive face right there.
Super hot.
In the end, we learned a lot. I think me and James are working very closely for the future projects to improve our facial performance pipeline. Hopefully, we'll get something even better for you guys. And I have to thank Activision for allow us to work with them.
All right. So obviously that's character modeling and animation, but they're not the only ones involved in getting a performance. We should maybe talk about some of the other teams that are maybe a little less obvious.
Oh, absolutely. Because, we're storytellers and every department helps tell the story. That's not hyperbole, that's just reality. The example I'd like to give is effects, which it was integral in this confrontation between Tyrael and Malthael. Which is, we developed it, took on this very personal vibe. This is really a story about two brothers in arms, right? You have Tyrael, the angel who ripped off his wings and nobly sided with the mortals, and you have Malthael, the angel who's become death and has returned to wreak havoc on those mortals, right? So this clash of personas and points of view, when Tyrael is begging, pleading, Malthael, brother, why? And Malthael's only response is to, icily peel off a layer of soul, and inspect it. That storytelling is only possible through a very tight collaboration between effects and modeling and a whole bunch of other departments. And in fact, this teasing out of the soul, it's just the culmination of a whole run of effects that we designed to help to tell the story and to showcase Malthael's ability to take souls. And Eric, do you want to talk about how we made it really cool?
Yeah. I mean, you'd never really feel the direness of Tyrael's situation had you not just seen Malthael casually take souls, and it was a really unique opportunity that Mark brought to the effects team to be able to work on this and be part of the narrative. It was definitely a new challenge that we had to face. And all he knew at the time was that Malthael needed to steal souls, and he wasn't quite sure what it was going to look like, but he wanted something different and new. So I pitched this series of images to Mark. At the time, we didn't really know who Malthael was going to fight, so I used some concept art of the Barbarian, because the Barbarian makes everything cool.
Absolutely.
And the soul falls out, and it splashes down and turns into this liquid soul that's reforming and trying to struggle to get back to its original body, all the time getting sucked into Malthael. And originally I wanted there to be like a whole river of souls. They're all falling apart and reforming and falling apart in different stages, but Mark had to break it to me.
Let's not get carried away now.
Yeah, Mark had to break it to me that I really couldn't have one effect shot be half the cinematic.
Shocking.
It's odd. So we cut it down and pitched it to the story team, and they came up with this nice, clean, shorter version, which was actually really cool to see. It was in there as part of the story and working with the narrative, and it was just great to see it all flow together. So we took that, and once we knew it was kind of going to make it in, and this was the effect we were going with, we took it to concepting, and they created this image, which was kind of like a proof of what the final render could look like. And once we saw that, we really knew this is what we wanted. But there was still one question left, and it was kind of a big one, and that's how are we going to make this? So we kind of started the same way animation does, with reference, but we have a camera too. But at the same time, we take things to a bit more of a technical level in effects. We use a lot of highly specialized tools that really track all the data, and it's really sophisticated technology in a really controlled environment.
This looks like science.
Yeah, you can see some of all this going on right here.
Eric, is that you in the green suit?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I guess we'll never know.
I will say the water was cold. Yeah, so that was not good at all. Didn't help with anything. Although we did learn one thing from that, and that it's best to kind of leave this sort of thing over to our friends in animation. So James, you want to talk about the animation for this shot?
Well, that's exactly what we would have done. That's actually what we did. We just didn't tell you. But what we did with animation is we really, got together our teamwork. We worked closely with the effects team. Teamwork is a really important thing at Blizzard. The first thing we did was one of our lead animators, Ricardo, did this test animation using the only rig we had at the time, which was the captain from Pandaria. And that gradually evolved into this other blue ghoul, which is the final animation, over many, many iterations, back and forth between the two teams. And the final blue ghoul ended up being a lot more like noodly and stretchy to match more and integrate with the water effect.
Yeah, animation really gave us something great to work with. And once that was kind of squared away, I could focus on my challenge at hand. And that was like, how are we going to change liquids into shapes? And it turns out there's actually some really great techniques for doing just that. And with those, you can do things like this, where you take a cube and you turn it into a bunny rabbit. I mean, because what says evil like a liquid bunny rabbit, But the problem with that is when you take that to an animated character, you get what I call the bubble man. And basically, there's too much liquid to really form all the details, so you kind of lose a lot of the fluid nature, but also lose a lot of the original character animation as well. So we thought maybe we could just emit a little bit of liquid off of the character, and that actually does something really cool. You start to get some of that fluid nature back in there, but it wasn't the total answer to the problem. So we thought, well, if emitting a little bit worked, why not emit off the entire character? And so the bridge doesn't fill up with liquid. We attract it back to itself, much like we did at the beginning. And that actually does some really cool stuff. And as you start pushing that more and more, you get lots of detail, and you really keep that fluid nature that we were after from the beginning. And it was right around this time that we actually got the finished animation, and so we could really just crank it up to 11. And at this point, we start throwing more particles at it, and there's so many particles it starts to look like a smooth surface. There's roughly about 110 million particles at this point, which is 10 times the number of particles we actually use for flooding Thousand Needles in the Cataclysm cinematic. So we might have gone a little overboard, but I think it really helped.
Nah.
But if that wasn't enough, we then also add back in that dripping simulation that we were doing at the beginning. And, and you always need more detail, so we add in a foam simulation. And with that foam simulation, it just kind of rides along on top of the other simulation and really accentuates the details in certain areas. But if that's not enough, why not throw even more particles at it? And we do a secondary splash pass. So with this, we start getting more particles thrown around, add in more detail, and that brings our particle count to well over 200 million, which is probably one of the highest particle counts we've actually hit on the cinematics team. But we still need to render it at this point. So one of our effects artists, Matt Cordner, generated all these passes that you see on screen now. And these get passed on to the compositor and just allow for a lot of control for them to be able to give that final look that you see on screen. And the compositor for this shot, Jason Hill, then takes all that stuff and puts it together into the final image. And as you can see as we go through this, there's actually a lot of other effects going on in this shot other than just the liquid soul-sucking effect. At the beginning there's the energy shield, there's the death smoke throughout it, and even Malthael's wings at the end, are an effect of themselves. So there's a lot of hard work that goes into every single shot, effects-wise. And the effects team in general, we do a lot of our own shading and surfacing stuff. For the rest, we have a whole surfacing team that does it. But real quick, I just wanted to show a really nice collaboration that was between the effects team and the surfacing team. And I could do an entire talk about the mummification effect that was done by one of our artists, Ho-Suk Chang. But for now, I'll just kind of leave you with this eye candy and pass it off to Steven to talk more about surfacing.
Thank you, Eric. Let's talk... Oh, Eric, everybody.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the pre-production process for the surfacing team. These are a series of photographs that we did, and they are done by our former look development supervisor, Finn Till. And the way we do this is we actually will go out to Hollywood, to some of the prop shops there, and we will rent props, weapons, cloth, costumes, and bring them back to our studio and set it up and do these photo sessions. Here you see is Malthael in our photo study. And this is an interesting one. This is very early on. Tyrael is supposed to get his ass kicked really bad. So we did this photo study, but as the story goes forward, our director Mark Messenger actually decided to move away from this. So we never really got to use this as a reference.
I'm sorry, Steven.
Yeah,
we'll do blood next time.
Yeah, we had a great blood shader made. Maybe next time. And here's Hardrum studies. These are really cool tools, this little photo shoots, because very early on in the show, without any assets being created, we can work with the director and the art director and do these quick studies to explore moods or color, lighting, materials of the show very, very early on, and it's very cheap as well. And here's an example how we use these photo studies. On the left-hand side, you see Malthael, and that's the photograph from our photo study. And on the right is all CG, it's all computer-generated images. And it's us trying to replicate the materials we see from the photo references. For example, the sphere, the metal sphere on the top, is us trying to replicate the metal from the armor. Also, we have some cloth renders and also some silk studies. Take a look at Malthael here. We did a fairly good job with the limited resources and props, and we managed to capture the creepiness and the nice creepy silhouette of Malthael. And today we're going to give you a exclusive look what Malthael looks like under that hood. Ta-da! Meet Gabe, our summer intern. Yes. And he did such a fantastic job. We actually hired him full-time, so now he's working full-time in cinematics. The other cool thing to look at is the chest armor. It's actually a helmet from another set of armor Gabe is just holding to his chest. It worked out pretty well after we combined everything together in our photo. Here's Gabe again on the left-hand side in his football gear. And on the right, we got Troy, one of our in-game artist posing for Tyrael. Here's another form of photo studies. On the top side of the image, it's pretty much what you would get with a normal camera when you shoot a piece of leather or a piece of metal. And on the bottom is when we put a polarized filter on the camera lens. And what it does is it cuts out the reflection of your material and it reveals the true color of the materials you're photographing. These are great help for the texturing process. So our texture artists can take these images and project them onto the models provided by Shin's department and create believable surfacing details. And lastly, we have the HDRI shoots, which are mainly used for the lighting department. Dan, can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you, I see a lot of cameras out there, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with what an HDRI image is. It stands for High Dynamic Range Image. And kind of to explain quickly our use of them, you pretty much go out and take an environment and then you shoot what we call bracketed exposures. And you kind of can see here, you take underexposed images and then you go up and you increment up by a stop, 2 stops at a time, whatever range you need. And what happens after that is you use a piece of software that combines these into a single image and you get a very high range of values from light to darks. And then we take those back into our 3D packages, wrap them on a spherical light, and you can use those pixel values to illuminate objects. Here's some examples of ones we actually use in our pipeline. This is what we call sunny day. You notice the sun's painted out. We'll replace that with an actual direct light in the 3D package. This is a foggy day where it's completely environment light, and here is one where the lights are actually missing. But if you see the spheres on the left, the top spheres are actually photo reference that we took on set that day, and then the spheres below that are actually our materials that we've replicated in 3D. And so we pass this over to Steven's guys, and they go off and work their magic.
Yeah, so Dan's team will provide us a bunch of light rigs, and here's an example what Malthael looks like in these different light rigs. It's a very important process for us because this gives an opportunity to our artists to make sure the materials behave correctly in different lighting scenarios. The Malthael was done by, surfaced by our surfacing artist Wei Wang, and he did a pretty good job balancing the metal, the leather, the cloth, and Malthael really looked like he is in these different lighting situations in these different turntables. Talking about turntables, we use this a lot for artistic and technical reviews when we sit in the dailies with the CG supervisor, director, and art director. In this example, this is a close-up for Tyrion's face, and we also have animation cache loaded here, courtesy of the animation department. It's a great tool for us to check and make sure our assets are holding up this close, there's no stretching on the textures, and also close the eyes and open the mouth up so we can see those areas that we normally don't see in a neutral pose turntable. Here's another example of the characters, the main 3 characters in the show. We have Tyrael, Horadrim, Guard, and Malthael, and also the heavily featured Malthael's weapon, the sickle. So we not only look at the character by itself, we also try to line them up and make sure not only they look good, the metal, the cloth looks good on Tyrael, it also needs to look good against the rest of the characters. And here's a sample of the assets we created for the show. As you can see, there's a lot of work going to these cinematics for these individual assets, from environment to props to characters. I would also like to say, to call out that this is actually the first project the newly formed surfacing department has worked on. And we had a blast working on these assets. And during this process, this particular project, our pipeline and workflow for surfacing also changed quite a bit. That includes the introduction of monolithic shader as well. And we had a very great time working on these stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. So now we're approaching what we like to call the back end of our pipeline, where we take all of this hard work and we actually hand it to our lighting team, who's really responsible for crafting the look of the cinematic and the image as you see. So Dan, can you tell us some of the techniques?
Sure. As we talked about earlier, you and Chris, Mark, you guys approached us early about the film noir. And as all these guys were working, doing all the upstream stuff, we were kind of gathering reference on our end. And we also are handed at the beginning of the show, every show, what we call a color script. And these are some just cell drawings of essentially every shot in the cinematic. It's well thought through at this point. And as you can see, they're taken to a nearly finished stage. But we're not necessarily supposed to take everything literally, but it's supposed to really serve as a style guide for us. We reference it all the way through the process, all the way to the end. We're constantly referring back to it. It's our show Bible, so to speak, in terms of the aesthetic. And we took this along with our film reference, and kind of you'll notice in here how some of these light shafts will break up edges, and that's that noir thing coming through in even these early stages. And you can see it all the way through, and it's just very, very helpful for us as we move forward. So we take this combined reference, and we challenged our team, and led by Jason Hill, our lighting lead, to go off and kind of create light rigs that would support this. So we looked at some of the reference and what defines film noir. It's a lot about how the light falls as much as how much light's in the scene. It's all about shadow. It's all about graphic lighting. So it's actually kind of fun because you don't get to do this very often. Most of the time you're putting fill lights and rim lights in areas to illuminate characters, but in this case you're allowed to let them fall off into darkness, as you can see in here, and it's much more about just strategically placing lights. And you'll kind of notice right here this graphic shadow across the wall, which is a classic film noir technique, where you see Mickey Rooney, he's definitely scared about something, and it kind of helps build that claustrophobic moment in the shot. And here's kind of another example of some of the composition, how you can see light being thrown in different depths to create the depth in the shot and the composition. So as you can see in some of these breakdowns, we use a lot of these same techniques. We would build up shots from back to front and try to use shafts of light and walls to graphically light, throw shadow on to build some of this up. We really wanted to make this a dark, kind of non-literal film noir, but bring it kind of more into the just inspired film noir look. And you'll notice here's another one of these shots where it definitely stands out as a noir, where we use lighting behind Tyrael to carve him out and let him kind of pass in and out of light rather than going in and filling in everything on him. And we do that with many different techniques. We can point the light's directions, and we can put things in front to shadow it, or we can cheat. And one of the ways we cheat is a thing called gobos. Any of you who've done CG lighting know about this. It's the same thing if you'd gone on set and you put a piece of paper in front of a light and it casts a shadow. We do the same thing in 3D, but we actually just use images. So we can take a scene like this, which is just a sphere on a plane rolling around when that's a shadow cone, or excuse me, a light cone there. And then we can take an image kind of like this. We throw it in front of the light, and it multiplies down those values to give you much more intricate lighting like this. And it's actually very cheap, very easy, and it's very art directable, which is ultimately the most important thing. So here's some kind of classic film noir looks that you'd see. I'm sure you've seen a character before with the Venetian blinds across the face. Here are some of the ones that we kind of were inspired by to kind of bring more of the organic look into the cinematic. And there were a few shots though where we kind of had to throw back to the more literal moments. Our art director Chris Tunick felt very strongly in this scene that it would really cater to the moment to have this raking eye highlight, very similar to the Raymond Burr shot you saw back in the reference, to build up this moment where Tyrael he's betrayed in this moment. He's scared. I mean, for all he knows, he's about to die. And we really wanted the audience to kind of feel that confined, like he's not going anywhere. He's in the clutches of Malthael, and we really felt like this really helped build that moment in the cinematic. Now, Malthael, on the other hand, was a beast. Any of you who've done CG lighting before know that it's very difficult to light metal. Metal doesn't react very good to diffuse light. It's all about reflection and specular. So we kind of had to pick and choose how to do it. So as you know, you'll kind of look throughout the cinematic and some of the wider angle shots, and like this, one of the ones where we wanted to reveal him more, we tried to just use the noir to be able to sculpt his silhouette and not concentrate so much on the lighting on him. Here's kind of a good example. If you'll notice, as he rises up in the air too, he did the same thing, let his wings illuminate the shot and let Malthael fall into complete shadow there. Same here. But then we had the close-up moments. And we wanted to treat those a little bit differently in that, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the movie Alien. Ridley Scott made a very good decision in that movie of not letting you see the alien. That's one of the things that was so scary about it, is you didn't know what you were scared of, you just knew that you were scared. You get glimpses here and there. So we kind of took a step in that direction with Malthael. So a lot of these closer shots, we would just do glints here and there. And if you'll notice in this image in particular, as he's approaching, the moment starts to get more intimate. We really controlled where the lighting fell there, and just thought we'd give you little glimpses. And even what I consider my favorite shot in the whole thing, oddly enough, is the moment where you're looking straight at his face, and we don't show you anything. You can barely make out his hood. It's all about just some glints and glares there, but it's scary. It's a real cool moment in the cinematic. And then we had a couple other challenges. Our environment was this Tomb of Arrakis, and it's very big, a lot of geometry, and we're a full ray tracing pipeline, so that's a lot of rendering. So we kind of had to figure out a technique, or a couple techniques, to ways to get through this. With our environment, we chose a way we call pan and tile. It's where we took our full 3D environment, we lit it, and then we put a camera in the middle of it and rendered a full 360 degrees, as you can see in this image here. And that provided us with 6 high 4K images that we could then take back into our comping package, Nuke, and reproject spherically onto a sphere and bring our 3D cameras for the shot into that, and then voila, you've got a very simple, easy background that you can have movement in. And this was very successful for us for most shots. There were a few shots, though, where it wouldn't work. This is one in particular because of the amount of parallax. You're flying, it's a big crane shot over the environment, and it wouldn't work. So our matte painting lead, Anthony Eftekari, took one of those single frame images from our actual 3D camera, reprojected that back onto some decimated geometry in Nuke, and then he took that and painted all over it just to kind of really touch it up, art direct that moment as much as possible. It was just another really great tool. And then we went back in and added our 3D geometry and 3D renders back over that to build the final scene, and it was just a cool moment where a couple departments kind of come together and figure out the best solution for a shot, really. And we were really happy with how it turned out. Blizzard decided a couple of years ago that it was in the best interest of the studio moving forward with the amount of content we're going to be creating to create our own in-house lighting package, which we call Aurora. And Diablo for us was kind of the maiden voyage of that software package. And it was scary going in, but it turned out to be a huge, huge win. So big shout out to the tech team and development team that developed Aurora, and we honestly couldn't imagine working without it at this point.
Yes, I imagine you tried to take it away from the lighters now, they'd start screaming.
We would be screaming, yes.
Awesome, thank you. So a lot of tips and techniques going on here, some ways to save some resources. Resource constraints are always something you have to deal with. Mark, was that a problem, trying to tell a story?
I don't think we think of it as a problem, do we? It's more like, by knowing your limitations, you know, that can make you more creative. You know the box you got to work in. And, you know, I should mention, I'd be remiss if I did not bring up sound as one of the really powerful tools in our kit, because whether it was like the creepy soundscape of the Soul Stone, or Malthael coming out of the darkness, or the wails of the Horadrim, you know, the experience of watching a movie is really only 50% visual. Sound is so important, and I think our sound department really knocked it out of the park on this one. But it's all about balancing those tools in your kit, because like you say, nobody has infinite resources, right? We all have to work with the time and the tools that we have, even Blizzard, right? But I think, you know, by focusing on what was truly important, by working with the game team to try to figure out, you know, what was the real truth of the cinematic, and in this case, it was really about this relationship, this dramatic relationship between these two brothers in arms. Then I think we were able to deliver altogether an engaging experience, and hopefully an emotional experience, and one that fits within the world of Diablo. I think we achieved that.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say from all of us here that from our panel up here, thank you very much for spending some time with us today. I know your BlizzCon time is very precious, and we appreciate you coming and listening to us. And I also wanted to say that Blizzard Cinematics is a very large group of people, and for every person that you see up here on the stage, there are 20 or 25 people who are not here, and we want to say thank you from all of them to you as well. We have a little bit of time for questions, just a few. There is a microphone in the center of the aisle. If we don't have a chance to get to your question, the entire panel will be over here on stage right, and we'll be happy to answer anything you want. Once again, thank you very much for coming, and have a great BlizzCon 2013.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, what are some of the programs that you use when you, from sketch to final production, that you use to create all these beautiful cinematics?
Well, down the road, we tend to, let me answer this one for a little bit, but anybody chime in if you want. We tend to use quite a number of off-the-shelf programs. So we definitely use Maya, Autodesk's Maya. Mari is some of our texturing package. And as Dan mentioned, we also have some of our own internal tools, like our own lighting package. It's really a mix. It's something that we try and find the right tool, and if it's not there, then quite often we have to create our own on that one. Anything else on that?
You know, we use the modeling department, we use the Mudbox and also ZBrush for sculpting.
We use TV Paint for storyboards.
Hey, how you guys doing? I had two quick questions for you. One, are you guys working linearly in linear workflow?
Yes.
Okay. And then second, were there any technical limitations, or did it all come down to time constraints?
Are there technical limitations with time?
There's always technical limitations, but we're getting to a point in CG where you can do anything you want to do. It just comes down to a matter of time. So were there technical limitations, like software couldn't handle it, or was it all time constraints?
That's a really good question. I think there's always some, anybody feel free to chime in here, but there's always a technical limitation that we go through. I can say that one thing that we sort of mentioned here is we rebuilt our entire pipeline before the cinematic was done, and that was a challenge in itself, so that's a limitation. Any others?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely pushed the limits on that shot for the effects. Like, I think the final sim took about 2 weeks just to simulate. So stuff like that can be a little crazy sometimes.
A little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the reality of render times, right?
And for the sound of your questions, I guess you're familiar with production, and you probably work in 3D. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm a digital map painter.
Yeah, I mean, as you would know, we also do a full ray trace pipeline now, which is kind of relatively new. There's always been a bit of a mix, but now we pull the trigger. That way we can get the higher fidelity images, which restrictions come with that, as you know, like crazy. Render times, development, it's fewer iterations. So it's really important that everybody stays more focused, because you get fewer iterations. But I would say for my guys, I know that was the biggest change for us, is that when you hit that switch on ray tracing, it's a hit, and you got to really be very focused on what you're doing.
Cool, thank you. Hi guys.
I'm sorry to talk about limitation again. I just wanted to know if hardware was the simple answer for all limitations, because it really feels like you can do anything you want. And is this still the hardware, the limitation right now, or just the mind and the ideas?
Is hardware a limitation? I think as going to that resource question, yes, it's always a limitation. It's something that we struggle with. We're not a giant film company. You know, we don't have the resources of an ILM or a Weta workshop or anything like that. That's just not what we do. So that's something that we spend a lot of time making sure that we spend as little time as possible making mistakes. And that hardware is something that our render farm is tiny compared to some of those larger studios' render farms. It's a mere bucket, you know, of their skills or their resources. So yeah, we're always very careful with that.
Yeah, and you know, no matter what company you're talking about and the amount of resources, they're always a problem. Because if you've got a vast amount of resources, you figure out a way to make a project that's going to peak that, you know, and then everybody's asking for more. So it seems like no matter what the scale of the infrastructure is, you're always going to hit it and ask for more and more and more. So.
All right. Thanks for the dreams, guys. That's just awesome.
Thank you.
That's kind of funny.
Hey, how you doing? Other than like the River of Souls, which would have looked awesome, by the way, was there anything else that didn't make the cut, maybe for like editorial reasons, or you just didn't have the time to put it into the trailer?
Well, that sounds like a Mark question to me.
We went through a lot of iteration on this stuff, you know, and yeah, actually, we had a lot of different ideas for how to move forward, and so many of them are on the collector's DVD, which you can purchase. Sorry. But no, literally, actually, we talk a lot about that in the DVD, so I don't want to spoil too many of the surprises.
All right, thank you.
What kind of processor power and how many computers do you need to render something like this?
Yeah, as many as we can get our hands on. Generally, our render farm is about in the 500 range, really, and those kind of processors range. It really depends on how old the machines are. You know, some we have machines that are going back 4 or 5 years. We still use them every day of every hour of every day. Obviously, you know, the faster machines you can get, the better off you're going to be. As Dan said, we're in a ray tracing pipeline now, and that means a lot more processing power. And so, yeah, we usually tend to look at server blades for these. They usually have 2 or 3 CPUs, 4 CPUs, and as much memory as we can get our hands on. Some of the machines have as much as 64 gigs of RAM.
Impressive. Thank you very much.
How you doing? I just wanted to know if you ever have any collaboration with the studios that you mentioned, like ILM, Weta, when you come up with anything you can't particularly solve. Do you have resources with those studios or with those special effects houses that you can make a phone call and say, hey, how do you guys do it?
Yes, very, very often. I think almost everybody up here and in Blizzard Cinematics has either been at another one of those studios or knows a lot of people at those studios. There's always a back channel communication. You know, you can call up a friend and ask them. We also have technical conferences that we go to. SIGGRAPH, Special Interest Graphics, part of the ACM group, we go to a lot. And I believe the animators go to a conference of their own, especially.
We go to one in Burbank, CTN, which is next weekend, just for the animation industry, concepting and storyboarding.
Yeah, so we definitely do try and do that, and there's always sharing of techniques, or the alchemy recipe, if you will.
Facebook really helps.
Thank you.
Well, I think we're out of time. Once again, thank you so much for coming, and we'll be out next door right here if you have any other questions. Thank you.
Happy BlizzCon.
The Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls cinematic intro, bringing death to life panel. Up next, StarCraft 2 update panel. Welcome to the StarCraft 2 Update Panel. Your panelists are Tony Sue, Kevin Johnson, David Kim, and Kim Fawn.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming out to the StarCraft 2 panel. My name is Tony Sue, and I'm the senior producer working on StarCraft 2. Today, I'm here to talk to you about some of the patches and features that we're coming up with in the future. However, before I get too far ahead of myself, I want to take a quick moment just to chat about some of the things that we've chatted about in 2013 and some of the highlights that we've put out, and to give you a little bit of the philosophy of why we thought they were good features and some of the things we're trying to do even more of in the future. All right, so the first thing is spawning. Spawning is a really great thing because what it did is if you and your friends are on different versions of StarCraft 2, so say your friend is on the Free Starter Edition, you're playing on Heart of the Swarm, what it did is it took your friend and it brought them all the way up to your level, so that way you're both able to play StarCraft 2 together. And so the reason I thought this was such a great feature is because it made it even easier for you to play with friends, and this is something we're hoping to do even more of in patch 2.1 as well. The Customer Observer UI is another area that we've made some really great improvements this year with Heart of the Swarm. However, it's something that I think beyond just putting out a new UI, what was even more important was that we made it so that it was fully customizable. So that way, if you take a look here, this is something that SE2 Mapster did, and they took our UI and they broke it down completely to say these are all the different things you can do with it. And so whether you're streaming, whether you're doing replays, whether you're observing, you can customize it and make it work any which way you want. And ultimately, the greatest thing about this is it empowered the community. And by empowering the community, it allows you to customize and use it the way that you want, and this is something we want to do even more of in patch 2.1 as well. All right, many multiplayer maps. We've put out a ton of new maps this year. With Heart of the Swarm, we put out 21 new maps. And even since Heart of the Swarm, up until now, we've actually released 21 new maps. However, the big credit on that one goes out to the community. A ton of the new maps that we've put out have been submitted to us through the Team Liquid map contest, have been made by our community members. So thank you so much for all the awesome maps you guys have made, and we've been able to bring to you guys on the ladder. And ultimately what that means is we want to make sure that we're giving you more of the things that you love, and we want to continue doing that in patch 2.1. All right, so anyhow, a little bit of the nostalgic stuff onto patch 2.1. Patch 2.1 is something that we're currently working on, and we're hoping to have out by the end of the year. But even better is sometime next week, what we're aiming to do is we're aiming to put everything on the PTR so that way you guys can test it right away afterwards. Clans and groups is the first area that I wanted to touch upon, and this kind of goes into the area of talking how I was talking about earlier, about making it easier to play with your friends. The first new feature that we're adding is events. I know that as your clans and groups grow over time, as you have friends that are playing from all over the country, it makes it a little bit hard to coordinate to figure out, hey, when should we get together and play StarCraft? So, on the social menu, if you open it up, we have a little tab, and you can create an event, and the awesome thing is, even when the event gets closer, it'll give your friend a toast to say, hey, you know what? Tony added an event to say, let's play StarCraft on Saturday. Would you want to join a game? So it's a really powerful way to make it easier for you to play with your friends and to coordinate. Custom clan decals is something we wanted to bring to you as well. The example here is that basically you could take any decal that you want and you can upload it. And the example is I took Team Liquid's logo, so if you're part of the Team Liquid clan, this is something of what it'd look like. And the cool thing too is it's not just the Zerg logo, but it's also customized for each of the 3 races. So any game that you play in, anyone that you play against will see that logo as well, and you can show off your clan identity. Extension mods is another new thing that we're adding, and it goes along the lines of what I was talking about, of empowering the community and giving you tools. Right now, if you want to play a map with custom data, what you have to do is you have to take that custom data and you have to modify it for every single map out there that you want to play on. It's a lot of work, it's a little bit tedious, and it's really hard to figure out what you want to play. I think a prime example of this is Big Game Hunters. In patch 2.1, what we've done is we've actually made an extension mod for Big Game Hunters, so that way if you want to play Big Game Hunters on any map out there, all you do is select the map. You select play with extension mods, and you can automatically play Big Game Hunters on it without having to customize that data, so it makes it far easier for you to play. Another great example here is Mono Battles. Mono Battles is a version of StarCraft 2 that's a lot of fun to play, and it's customized by Nade9 and his community. But right now, if you take a look at this shot, this is what it looks like if you want to go play Mono Battles. It's a little bit of a train wreck because there are so many different versions of that map out there because everyone has to be customized for each tile set. So with the power of extension mods, once again, you could just click on the map you want to play on, you click on extension mods, and then you choose Mono Battles. So that way you don't have to go through this whole song and dance of figuring out of all these different versions, what's the one you want to play on. This next slide I think is really going to speak to map makers. The example that I'm using here is Imba League. Imba League is another really popular version of StarCraft 2 that has crazy versions like all buildings can move, or anytime you kill a unit, it comes back as a zombie. But the thing is right now, with the way that our editor works, is all the different maps that you put out there, since everyone is using your maps and customizing it, you don't get the popularity coming back to you. The great thing about extension mods is since you put out one extension mod and everyone is using that mod, all the ratings, all the rankings, all the popularity goes back to the original map maker, so that way your map shows up on the most popular list and people are able to play even more games of it. So I'm really excited to see what you guys are able to do with it. Going on to the thing of giving more of the things that you love, we're taking the level cap and we're raising it from level 30 all the way up to level 35. So that in of itself, not terribly exciting, but StarCraft decals are something that we're giving you. I know a lot of you are fans of John Burton's work out there from the StarCraft's animations, so we were able to talk to him and we brought him actually in-house and we had him make some new decals for you. So the Protoss, the Terran, and the Zerg ones are customized from his artwork, and so we're really excited for those. And even when you hit level 35, he made some custom portraits for you as well. So we're really excited to get those in your hands. This next one, I think, will speak to those who have ever played an arcade game or if you've ever played on custom games, is no more AFK hosts. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So I know there's nothing more frustrating that if you're playing a game of StarCraft and you can't wait to get in, and you wait for the lobby to fill up, and you wait for that one last player, and then they get in, and the host never starts the game. And you're like, what the heck, where is this guy? Is he watching a movie? I don't know what he's doing. But the awesome thing is with patch 2.1, we've added a feature that if someone is AFK after a certain period of time, it'll give them a notification to say, hey, you know what, you've been away for a while, so you should probably come back to the game. And if you don't respond to that, you'll be removed from the game automatically, so that way you're not stalling the game. And if the host gets removed, someone automatically gets promoted, and so that way you're ready to get the game started, and you could do even more of what you love, is playing the game. In patch 2.1, we're also giving you more soundtracks. I know a lot of you out there are big fans of our current music for StarCraft 2, and what our sound team has done is that they've actually taken the original music from StarCraft and Brood War, and they've completely remastered it, so that way it's available in an option. So whether you love the new music, whether you love the old music, you can listen to whatever you want, and ultimately that means happy players. All right, so I've done a lot of talking about patch 2.1, and I have one last thing to show you before I go, and one last thing to say. For the Horde, yeah. How many of you out there, by show of cheer, are Horde players? All right, Horde. I'm actually an Alliance player, so I'm going to be keeping my eye on every one of you who cheered earlier. Anyhow, you're probably wondering seriously, why am I talking about For the Horde? This is a StarCraft 2 panel. Well, one of the things you may not know is the team that works on StarCraft 2 is actually Blizzard's RTS team, and we've worked on the games for all the way from Warcraft 1 to StarCraft, all the way up through Warcraft 3. And so it's almost a tiny bit too early to be talking about this today, but it's something that we've been working on. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I wanted to show you a small preview of what we're working on for next year. And what we're doing is we're taking the Orc heroes from Warcraft 3, we're completely up-resing them, and we're bringing them to you in the StarCraft editor. Eventually down the line, we want to bring you all of the heroes. But here's a quick look. If you look at the Farseer, on the right side is a pretty poor beat-up puppy. But the guy on the left side is far better. We've taken him and we've up-resed him. Same thing with the Orc Shadowhunter. If you take a look at the Blade Master, I think he actually looks pretty good in the old model, but the guy on the left is the new model, and I think he looks much, much better. And lastly, I have the Tauren Chieftain. You can take a look at the guy on the right. We've given him a face look, so he no longer has those crazy mad cow eyes, but he's looking much better. He's looking much beefier. Yeah? He's looking utterly awesome. But anyhow, I'm running out of cow jokes, and I've done enough talking, so let me go and hand it off to Kevin Johnson. He's our senior manager for the community team, and he has even more stuff to share with you about patch 2.1. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony. All I have to say about that model is boo. No, I'm just kidding. No, Tony, you're awesome. All right, so additions. My name is Kevin. Like Tony said, some of you might know me as Cloakin from the StarCraft 2 forums or around the community. I'm here to talk to you about additions. You're probably wondering what the heck that means. I'm talking about StarCraft 2 Starter Edition. How many of you out there are familiar with StarCraft 2 Starter Edition? Anyone? Yeah? Okay, cool. You've heard of it. That's good. That's a good start. Starter Edition is our free way to play StarCraft 2. Now, I know a lot of you out there probably already own StarCraft 2. You have Wings of Liberty, you have Swarm, so you're probably wondering, why do I even care about StarCraft 2 Starter Edition? Well, I'll tell you why you care about StarCraft 2 Starter Edition, and that is because of the noobs, right? We want to bring noobs into this system, so who are you going to roll, right? No, I'm just kidding. Who are you going to play with? Okay, tough crowd out there. No, seriously, we're always trying to find new ways to bring people into our games, both to provide more people for you to play with, as well as just share the StarCraft 2 universe with more players. So yes, let's talk about Starter Edition. Those of you that own StarCraft already, think about the ways in which this might impact some of your friends and how they might be interested in the game. And those of you who haven't yet bought StarCraft, maybe these are some compelling reasons for you to jump in and check it out. All right, so currently if you get into Starter Edition, before patch 2.1, so the patch that's coming before the end of the year, you can only play as one race. Usually that's Terran, but it's whatever race we have flagged at the time. Well, I'm happy to say that in 2.1, we are going to be changing that, and you will now be able to play as all three races at any time. We're really excited about how this could just give people a better and clearer picture of what StarCraft 2 is all about if they've never played before. All right, jumping into the meat of what I want to talk about today, and that is the arcade. How many out there have played custom games in the arcade before? Anyone? Awesome. Cool. Yes, we love the arcade. For those of you who don't know what it is our home for custom games. You can find it in the UI for StarCraft 2. It's on the left side, one of the main buttons there. Now, here at Blizzard, we love the idea of taking our tools, our resources, our art assets, sound assets, whatever it is, and giving it to the community to see what they can do with them, how they can make them, and what kind of games they can bring to the table. Arcade is our home for that. We have a history with this, as I was saying. It starts all the way back in Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. That was when we released our first editor. Moved into Warcraft 2. Then in StarCraft 1 and Warcraft 3, we saw a massive, massive boom in the creation of custom games in our environment. Dustin talked about it in the opening ceremony if you were listening to him, but we did see the whole birth of genres of games happen here in War 3. The whole tower defense genre came out of there. The Dota-style, hero, brawler style of gameplay was born here, and man, at Blizzard, we couldn't have been more excited about that. We love the idea of creating an environment, a space where players can make awesome things and even push the boundaries of the gaming industry forward. So in StarCraft 2, we've actually released an even more powerful editor, and we've seen some awesome games already in that environment currently being played, but we think there's more we can do with it, and that's what I want to talk to you about. So over the past year, we've even been trying to find some of the best games in the environment, and what we've been doing is flagging them for highlight in the arcade. You see it in this top banner in the UI. This is Night of the Dead, an awesome game if you've never played it before. You should check it out. Now, when we feature a game or we highlight it like this, we also accompany it with a blog that has a video, a developer interview, and the other main cool thing that we do is we flag it for play in Starter Edition. Now, I know that might not sound like a big deal, but it's actually a massive deal to these developers, because essentially what we're saying is, hey, we've made your game available to the entire planet for free. So it's been a really cool thing for them. Along with the Arcade Highlight, we have our Arcade Workshop program, which we recently started. This is how we get games that are sort of in the process of being developed and maybe need a little bit more feedback. We highlight them here with this little wrench logo that you see in the banner there, trying to get people to play, give the developer feedback, and help them push their game towards completion. Now, as I said before, developers love these programs because it gets people playing their games, whether they own StarCraft or not. As you can see, we have our little top played list here. Let's take a quick look at Squadron Tower D. Check this out, over 51,000 ratings on this game. That's over 51,000 people, twice the size of Blizzcon, who have stopped, taken some time to write feedback and their thoughts about the game. That's incredible. Developers love this, right? Not only that, but players love it. They get to give their feedback, they get to share their thoughts, rate the game, be an active and vocal part of the community. The only negative that we found with these programs is the fact that these highlights eventually have to fall off the highlight list. We can only highlight so many games, and then they fall off the Starter Edition play. But we started to ask ourselves, why in the world are we doing that? We have this awesome environment of games, so many incredible games, not just the ones we're highlighting, but tons of others as well. You know, what if we could just open the doors? What if we could do something more with that? Well, I'm here to tell you that in patch 2.1, we will be doing just that. We will be making the arcade completely free. Yeah, definitely worth some claps. So this is awesome. It's super simple. It's everything that I've been talking about. It's all a part of Starter Edition. So if you don't have StarCraft on your computer, you can go download it from the new Battle.net app or even from your account management page and play with it there. You get the arcade, as I said, but not only that, we're also going to be opening all custom games in StarCraft 2. So the traditional side of the StarCraft play experience, custom games, custom maps, maybe build trainers, those kinds of things that exist in the custom games section of StarCraft will also be free. So that matched with the fact that we're unlocking all races in Starter Edition play is pretty compelling stuff. Okay, so let's wrap this whole thing up. What is this all about? Already today, we have bustling and growing communities around games that exist in the arcade. Games like Star Strikers, or games like Squadron Tower D, as I said before, Aeon of Storms. These games already have growing communities of players who log in and play regularly. Not just these games, but many more. But the cool thing about what's happening at 2.1 is that we're blowing the doors down. We're essentially telling these developers, you can go promote your game globally, tell people to download the Starter Edition client, and they can play for free. We're really excited to see where these communities can go and how developers can build enthusiasm around their creations. Okay, so a couple challenges Developers, if you're out there, if you're watching on the stream, if you're in the audience, these aspiring game developers, I'd like you to think about what this platform could mean to you. This platform has over 14,000 custom art models, over 22,000 textures. That's not to mention the animations and particle effects waiting for you to create a game with. Single button publish on one of the most accessible publishing platforms on the planet. Maybe you will make the next genre-defining game. I can't wait to see it. I hope you're excited for patch 2.1. Now gamers, you should be excited as well, because with developers putting more energy and more emphasis and enthusiasm around their creations in the environment here, you're going to be getting better games, more people playing those games, and we think that's going to be a great, awesome win all around. Okay, so to leave you and pass the mic here, I'm going to show you a quick video of some of the games that currently exist in the StarCraft II arcade. I hope you enjoy and have a great BlizzCon.
Hello everyone, my name is David Kim, and now that we covered what's coming next in patch 2.1 as well as the improvements to the arcade, let's talk a little bit about multiplayer. So today on the multiplayer side, we're going to be talking about the internal processes that we use as well as the external processes, and then we'll lead into the current state of the game in Heart of the Swarm, and we'll finish off with our future goals. So we have a few different teams working on StarCraft 2 at Blizzard, and the first is the design team. So the purpose of this design team is to see the big picture in StarCraft 2, as well as check things like matchup excitement or each race is doing compared to the other two races. So the goal of this team is to really figure out the overall strengths and weaknesses of the races as a whole, rather than about worrying about things like, is this unit supposed to be 2% stronger or 1% weaker? We also have the game analysis group. This is a much smaller group. And what this group does is we try to analyze specific tournament games in order to figure out the very specifics and details of StarCraft 2 games. So how we do this is individually, we try to watch every single major tournament game around the world. And then we gather as a group for discussion as well as to figure out solutions to potential problems, or to just analyze and see if proposed problems are actually problematic. We also have the balance team, and this team requires quite a skilled subset of players from all around Blizzard. So what this team does is we try to test changes internally before we release them to the public, whether it's on balanced patches or it's on balanced test maps. And we try to grab players across all of Blizzard so that we can really utilize and really grab the best of the best players within Blizzard. So this is an example of something that we looked at recently. It was a biomine strategy against Zerg. We are receiving a lot of feedback from our community as well as pro players that Zerg is struggling against this strategy a few months ago. So we looked at very specific tournament games to figure out if that's really the case. What we learned was we realized the better players actually come out ahead even when this strategy is used. However, we did realize the number of games where this strategy is being used is a little too much. And that's why we decided to make a lateral change in the next patch of nerfing Widow Mines and buffing siege tanks, so that Terran's strength as a whole doesn't decrease, but at the same time we can get a little bit more diversity in terms of strategy. So another thing that we looked at and we are continuing to look at right now is the swarm host strategy. And as you guys know, there's two main swarm host use cases right now. First is the more exciting, constantly moving around and finding holes and attacking and destroying buildings or units with locusts. But the second is the more passive and defensive playstyle, and we're trying to figure out which is the more optimal way to play, which strategy is what the pros are preferring to use. And once we figure that out, we'll come to a conclusion in this area, but right now we don't know yet. So it's